Can Superman fight against Swamp Thing? Let's get to it. Welcome to the Complete Story Series, where I take trade paperbacks and single issues and I break them down into digestible bites so that I can read them dramatically back to you. All alterations of the panel selected images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. Today we're going to be covering the Superman Rebirth Annual, in which he fought Swamp Thing. Hope you enjoy. Over in Hamilton County, Clark goes out to check on some of the vegetables that he's been trying to grow. But as he looks at them, he notices that they're all dried up, which is strange considering that they've had a lot of rain lately. As Clark changes, he thinks that maybe he just needs a different perspective on things. He flies up through the county, and he begins to look at all of the rivers and creeks, and he notices that they've all seemingly dried up. And with no droughts in the area, that could only mean that what's happening isn't a natural occurrence. Down below, Clark scans the ground and sees a sinkhole, and somehow he gets a feeling that he's being watched. Just then, a head appears from the ground shouting, "You do not belong here anymore!" The head pulls itself out of the ground, and Clark says, "Well, hello, Dr. Holland. Or should I call you Swamp Thing?" Holland says, "Holland is fine." Clark then asks, "What did you mean by I don't belong here anymore?" "I've sensed that something is wrong in this place, an anomaly between you and this world, and because of you, there's a disturbance in the green. There's been a vibrational aberration, and I believe it's related to the way that you draw solar energy from the sun, Superman, due to it being different from the previous Superman." Clark reaches out his hand, telling him that he has been seeing some strange things lately, but together they can explore the problem. As Clark's hand touches Holland's, the handprint begins to glow, and Holland begins to scream! Clark tells him, "I didn't mean to." And Holland's body begins to change form, and he begins talking in a different language. As he continues, Clark realizes that Holland is now speaking Kryptonian. He lashes out, thrashing at Clark, hitting and knocking him away. But after being hit with one more blast, Clark stands up shouting, "We need to work together." Holland continues to speak in Kryptonian, and Clark says that from the sounds of it, the dialect is ancient and fractured, but from what I can tell, it sounds like you're screaming for help. He charges forward, grabbing onto Holland, and he flies straight into the ground. As they go deeper, Clark tells Holland to tap into the green, focus and center yourself. Slowly, Holland begins to take a root and he starts to change back to normal, and then he launches him and Clark out of the ground. Once Clark lands, he starts to smell a strange odor coming out of the crater, and then vines shoot out, grabbing onto him. He shouts, "Release me!" But Holland says, "I'm afraid I cannot honor your request." Clark then uses his heat vision to break free, and as he starts to fly away, Holland starts to wrap him back up. As the vines begin to pull him down, Clark tells Holland that he's left him no choice but to fight. And Holland appears stating, "I don't wish to fight, but I wish to fuse so that you may understand." Clark begins spinning, trying to break free of the vines, and just as he does, Holland lunges forward and the two of them punch each other in the face. Once Clark begins to regain his balance, he says, "I felt that and it hurt." He then flies back and hitting Holland so hard that his body shoots down into the ground. Clark asks him, "Are you ready to talk now?" And then Holland's voice tells him, "No." Clark turns back and he sees several stalks with Holland telling him, "We are past the exchange of words." All the bodies begin to surround and grab onto Clark, and as more and more of them pile on, they begin to form a giant fist. The arm reaches up and it drops Clark into the mouth of a giant Holland, and then chomp! Clark begins to open up his eyes as he hears the voices of Holland beginning to talk to him. "No matter if they are alien or of this world, we are all organic. The vibration that I felt is coming from how you are drawing energy from the sun. The previous Superman did not draw the same amount. You are drawing much more than he did. Because of this, you may want to consider not staying on the planet due to the chance of you damaging it." As Clark listens, he tells him, "This is my home. I can't leave it. There must be another way." So Holland tells him, "I may be able to help, but I will need your permission to make a deep intrusion. We will need to become one with no barriers between us." So Clark tells him, "Do it." Clark's cape begins to wrap around him, and that's when we hear Holland talking, telling him how he has had trouble assimilating to this world. The world is fighting against him, and just like white blood cells, the Earth is trying to expel that which it seems to pose as a danger. That is because he is not being fully accepted and embraced by this world. He is still holding on to an Earth that he is no longer a part of, and now he must free himself of that tether and free himself of the past. Letting go doesn't mean that he will lose it. He experienced it. He is who he is today because of it. Slowly, Clark begins to pull and rip the vines wrapping around him, and Holland's voice rings through him. "Be the man of tomorrow. Leave yesterday behind." Clark flies over the river, now filled with water, and he tells Holland, "Thank you." Holland tells him that he has attuned him as best as he could to this world, but now he must keep his eyes open on the horizon and not behind him. Holland then picks a branch off his arm and he hands it to Clark. And Clark says that he hears it's good to talk to plants. Holland fades back into the ground and he tells him, That is true for both parties. Though they may not talk back, they are always listening. With the waters running again, Clark returns home just in time for dinner. And at the table, Lois asks John if he's finished with his chores yet. He says kinda, as in kinda started to mow the front lawn. And Clark tells him, you know what? Let's let it grow for an extra week. Nothing wrong with watching the grass grow sometimes. And that is a fun little side story of Superman. I really am loving Superman Rebirth. This entire new Superman is a great and classic Superman. It is a Superman that I love. Subscribe to the channel to stay on top of your favorite comic books, including Superman, DC Rebirth, and various Marvel books. And follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Comicstorian if you're interested in talking to me.